Martell Holt's biggest mistake? Martell Holt is back in the headlines again after his recent interview with Tasha K. As soon as the interview dropped, it caused a major wave on social media. People were surprised that Martell was still repeating the same old claims, the same accusations, the same victim story, and the same effort to present himself as misunderstood and wronged. At the beginning of the interview, Martell confidently said he had videos, messages, and other proof to back up his statements. But as the conversation went on, viewers noticed a shift. Even Tasha K's reaction started to change, as if she was realizing she was hearing familiar arguments that have been shared many times before. Melody Sherry didn't directly respond to the interview. However, a few hours later, she posted a short message on Instagram that said, "Truth doesn't need constant proof over time." Fans quickly took this as a clear response to Martell. Many people said she didn't even need to speak, her silence already said enough. Soon after, social media exploded with debates. Martell's name started trending across platforms. Opinions were divided, but most users were critical of him. Some supported him, but many questioned why he keeps bringing up the same issues. One user even said that if Martell truly had strong evidence, he would have shown it by now instead of repeating promises. Others accused him of using drama to stay relevant and promote his wine brand. Some people also said he should focus more on his children and personal growth instead of public disputes, saying that respect comes from actions, not arguments. Even Carlos King made a subtle post that many believed was about Martell. He wrote something along the lines of how people don't always change the truth, they just change their version of the story. Fans immediately connected this to Martell and praised Carlos for always supporting what they believe is the truth. The next day, Martell went live on Instagram. He appeared relaxed, holding a bottle of wine, and smiled while saying people call him a liar, but he will eventually prove everything. However, the audience reaction was mostly negative. Many viewers said they no longer believe his repeated promises because nothing ever changes. At the same time, Melody continued moving forward in her life. She announced a new fashion collaboration, which gained a lot of attention online. Many people saw this as a sign of her growth and success. Some even said Martell might feel frustrated seeing her progress. Meanwhile, Martell's business situation also didn't seem stable, and rumors about legal issues continued. Fans began comparing both of their lives, saying Melody was focused on her future while Martell was stuck in the past. Tasha K later addressed the situation on a live stream, saying her job is only to ask questions and let the audience decide what to believe. But critics still accused her of giving Martell a platform for views rather than truth. Things got more complicated when alleged leaked messages appeared online, supposedly showing Martell discussing how to present himself in the interview. Although these claims were never confirmed, many people believed the story and said the interview might have been planned or scripted. Martell denied everything, calling the chats fake. But by that point, many viewers were already doubtful. A common opinion spread online that once someone loses trust, it is hard to regain it. As discussions continued, some bloggers claimed Martell was planning more ways to damage Melody's image. Again, nothing was proven, but the rumors added more fuel to the situation. On the other side, people close to Melody said she wants peace and is focused on her children and career. Her supporters praised her calm attitude and said she avoids unnecessary drama. Former business partners also criticized Martell, saying his ego often causes problems in his professional relationships. This added to the public image of him being defensive and unwilling to take responsibility. Fans of Melody even started trending hashtags encouraging Martell to move on and focus on self-improvement instead of the past. Many people said he is stuck in old conflicts while others are moving forward. By the end, the overall public opinion seemed clear. Martell's credibility had taken a hit, while Melody was seen as moving forward quietly and successfully. Carlos King stayed neutral but continued posting thoughtful comments about truth and time. In conclusion, the big question remains, is Martell telling the truth, or is this just another cycle of controversy? Some believe he is misunderstood, while others think he refuses to accept responsibility for his actions. Only time will show what is real and what is not. After everything that followed, the situation around Martell only seemed to grow more complicated. Instead of calming down, the online conversation kept building. Every new post, every clip, and every comment added more fuel to the already heated debate. Martell tried once again to clear his name through another live session. He insisted that people were twisting his words and that there was a bigger picture no one was willing to see. According to him, he was being targeted unfairly and judged based on assumptions rather than facts. But even this time, the reaction from viewers was mostly the same: skepticism and criticism. Many said they had heard similar explanations before, without ever seeing real proof to back them up. Meanwhile, Melody continued to stay out of direct conflict. She didn't respond to the ongoing drama, which many people interpreted as strength rather than avoidance. Her supporters said she had already said enough in the past and didn't need to keep defending herself. Instead, she stayed focused on her work, her family, and her future plans, which only strengthened her public image. As the contrast between the two became more visible, public opinion kept shifting. People started pointing out how differently both of them were handling the situation, one constantly responding and the other choosing silence and progress. This comparison became a major topic across social media platforms. Carlos King again made subtle comments during interviews and discussions, emphasizing that time eventually reveals everything. Without directly naming anyone, his words were widely interpreted as a reminder that truth doesn't need constant defense. Fans continued to read between the lines, believing his stance had not changed. On the other hand, Tasha K faced her own wave of criticism. Some viewers said the interview gave unnecessary attention to repeated narratives, while others argued that it simply exposed what many already believed. She clarified again that her platform is about conversation, not judgment, but the debate around her role in the situation didn't slow down. As rumors, opinions, and reactions continued to circulate, one thing became clear: this story had gone far beyond a simple interview. It had turned into a public perception battle. Every action from both sides was being analyzed, judged, and reshared. In the middle of all this, Martell's attempts to rebuild his image seemed to struggle. His business promotions received mixed reactions, with many comments still focused more on his personal controversies than his professional efforts. Critics said that no matter what he tried to promote, the public discussion always returned to the same issues. Melody, however, continued gaining positive attention. Her name was increasingly associated with growth, independence, and stability. Supporters highlighted how she had managed to stay consistent despite years of public scrutiny. As days passed, the noise slowly started to settle, but the opinions remained divided. Some still believed Martell deserved a chance to be heard fully, while others felt the pattern had repeated too many times to ignore. In the end, the situation left behind more questions than answers. Whether this was a misunderstanding, a long-running conflict, or simply a difference in perspectives depended entirely on who was watching. But one thing was certain: the public had already formed its narrative, and changing it would not be easy for anyone involved. Even after the discussion began to slow down online, the tension around Martell's name didn't completely disappear. Instead, it shifted into a quieter but more persistent conversation. People were no longer reacting to every post, but the opinions that had formed were still strong. Martell continued trying to reshape his image. He appeared in short clips and promotional content, attempting to steer attention back toward his business ventures. He spoke about growth, lessons learned, and moving forward, but the response from the audience remained mixed. Some viewers encouraged him to focus on rebuilding, while others felt it was too late for words alone to make a difference. At the same time, Melody's momentum kept building. Her projects gained more visibility, and her public image stayed consistent, calm, focused, and forward-looking. This contrast between the two became a recurring point of discussion. Many people said that while one was still trying to explain the past, the other was already living beyond it. Social media commentators continued breaking down every new development. Even small updates were turned into debates about who was right or wrong. But over time, a shift began to appear in the tone of the audience. Instead of focusing on arguments, more people started talking about growth, accountability, and moving on. Carlos King once again indirectly reflected on situations like this during a discussion, emphasizing that time exposes intentions more clearly than words ever can. His message was widely shared, with many interpreting it as a reminder that consistency matters more than explanations. Tasha K also stepped back slightly from the ongoing noise, saying she had already shared her platform for the conversation and now it was up to the public to interpret it. Her name still came up in debates, but the intensity around her role started to fade compared to the initial backlash. As for Martell, the biggest challenge he faced wasn't just public opinion, it was rebuilding trust. Many people felt that repeated explanations without visible change were no longer convincing. Others argued that everyone deserves a chance to evolve, but actions would need to match words over time. Melody, on the other hand, continued to avoid direct involvement in the ongoing discussions. Her silence remained steady, and for her supporters, it became a symbol of self-control rather than avoidance. Each new milestone in her career added to the narrative that she had moved on successfully. Eventually, the conversation around both of them started to settle into a familiar pattern. Whenever Martell made a statement, it sparked brief debate. Whenever Melody achieved something new, it was celebrated and used as an example of progress. In the end, the story no longer felt like it was about one interview or one moment. It had become something larger, about perception, reputation, and the long-term impact of choices made in public life. And even though the noise would likely return again in some form, the overall direction of the narrative was already clear. One path was still trying to explain the past, while the other had already stepped into the future. Martell Holt's biggest mistake. Martell Holt is back in the headlines again after his recent interview with Tasha K. As soon as the interview dropped, it caused a major wave on social media. People were surprised that Martell was still repeating the same old claims, the same accusations, the same victim story, and the same effort to present himself as misunderstood and wronged. At the beginning of the interview, Martell confidently said he had videos, messages, and other proof to back up his statements. But as the conversation went on, viewers noticed a shift. Even Tasha K's reaction started to change, as if she was realizing she was hearing familiar arguments that have been shared many times before. Melody Sherry didn't directly respond to the interview. However, a few hours later, she posted a short message on Instagram that said, "Truth doesn't need constant proof over time." Fans quickly. Martell, however, didn't completely step away from addressing the situation. In later appearances, he leaned more into the idea of misunderstanding and misrepresentation, repeatedly saying that people only see fragments of the full story. He emphasized that there were private details the public didn't know, and that one day everything would make more sense in context. But for many viewers, that message started to feel familiar rather than new. The repetition made it harder for him to shift public perception. At the same time, some observers began to point out something different, less about what Martell was saying and more about what he wasn't doing. Critics argued that constant explanations without visible, sustained change tend to lose impact over time. Supporters, however, pushed back, saying that personal growth is not always immediate or publicly visible, and that judgment should not replace patience. Melody's silence continued to play a central role in shaping the narrative. She didn't engage in the ongoing discussions, didn't respond to indirect references, and didn't publicly revisit past disputes. Instead, she stayed focused on professional updates and personal milestones. Over time, this approach became a defining part of how the public perceived her, not through what she said, but through what she consistently chose not to say. As both paths continued, the contrast between them became less about conflict and more about direction. One side remained tied to explaining and defending, while the other continued expanding forward without commentary. This difference slowly reshaped how audiences interpreted the entire situation. Even media discussions began to shift tone. Instead of framing everything as a back and forth, some commentators started focusing on broader themes like reputation management, emotional boundaries, and how public narratives form over time. The conversation became less about specific events and more about patterns. Martell's efforts to